Walk me back to that night in December of 1967. It was a bit of a surprise. You were kind of brought in kind of almost last minute for this show.
Well, the show was actually produced by Joe Cohen, who owned the original music shop down on Chapel Street. And we had already done like a few of the stage shows. We did the Beach Boys a few times and the Rascals and, some other. So we were basically acquainted with, the opening act type deal. And we were up in Nova Scotia. We were up there for the Marines' 125th anniversary, and they just did this whole big blowout thing, which was really a mistake for me to drive up there, because in order to get there, you had to go from Nova Scotia on a 6-hour ferry boat trip.
Of course.
And we all ate before we got on the boat. The barf bags were aplenty going over. So, we took the gig, obviously, because, it was the Doors. They were a new group. We didn't know them. And we had worked with so many other acts, but never the Doors. So we were excited to come down, and we did. We came back, and we were supposed to do 15 to 20 minutes on stage, and that was it. It turned out to be an hour on stage because of what happened, and people were booing us, and it wasn't a happy situation. But we cleaned it up, and that's basically why we did the show.
Yep. Tell me, the arena was not exactly your classiest of venues when it came to the dressing rooms and everything.
Well, it's funny because when they did the movie was so wrong. I mean, they laid it out to be this grandiose spa, people parking cars, valet parking. It wasn't. It was a hockey rink. That's what it was built for. It was back in the days of the Blades in the 50s and, the local heroes. But the other thing they did were the kids' jamborees. And so they had to have enough dressing area for all of these teams that were coming in. Sometimes there were 50, 60 teams. So when they built the venue, what they did was they built a dressing room attached to a bathroom, attached to a dressing room, so on and so forth, all the way around the building. So theoretically, you could open one door and just keep opening doors and walk in through all the dressing areas and the bathrooms, which would have been fine, except that when Morrison decided that he wanted a little bit of attention from the brunette that he wound up with, he just kept walking through doors until he stopped in our bathroom. Now, why he didn't just knock on the door and open it is beyond me. There was 10 of us in the room. We weren't being quiet. All of the WAVZ disc jockeys were there. We had hairstylists cutting our hair for us the last minute. And so obviously there's a lot of people in the room, but he chose not to do that. He chose to go in and grope the girl about 2 feet away with the door shut. And my guitar player, Buddy Canary, went in to go to the bathroom. And he came back, he said, "There's some long-haired dude." Now, his back was to us. He said, "There's some long-haired dude in there with groping a girl." And I said, "Well, tell him to get out." So he came back and said, "You said some things to me that weren't really, really nice. He told me to go do something that was physically impossible." And I said, "Oh, really?" So I opened up the door to the hallway, which is where all the police were, because each dressing room had police protection. And I said to the cop, I said, "Could you go in and clear my bathroom?" I said, "We have these new clothes on and there's no pockets. So all of our cash and our wallets and our car keys and everything else are sitting on this table, and I'm not too excited about having somebody just come into the room while we're on stage and everything will be gone when we get back." So he did. He walked in and he said to the two folks in there, we still hadn't seen anybody because, of course, we were in our own dressing room. And he said, you can't be back here, you have to go. And Morrison turned around and said, "Eat me." And the cop said, "All right, now listen, I'm being very serious." Now, by this time, I had walked over to the door. So as far as I am from you, which is about 2.5 feet, is how far I was from Morrison. But we had never met the guy. Who knew who he was? So the officer says, as he's shaking the mace, he says, "This is your last chance to evacuate the property and leave." And Morrison turned around and said, "This is your last chance to eat me," and pushed the cop. Now, I said, "This can't be good." So I opened up the door to the hall and hollered, "Fight!" And about 10 police came in and just proceeded to knock the hell out of Morrison. They had him physically carrying him, head, the 9 yards. The girl had taken off. She had split. She was running like her mother was going to notice she was gone. And Morrison finally said, "I'm Jim Morrison." And, you know, not to throw dispersions on the guy, but I mean, I've been around drugs all my life, you know, and he had a little mother's little helper. And so consequently, the police didn't know what to do. So they took him back to his dressing room. All right, now, the way the show was supposed to run, there was another band, Loxley Hall something, I forget, it was so many years ago. But anyway, they were supposed to be the first band on, and then we were going to do the meat of the rest of it, and then, of course, the Doors would come on. We were going to be on stage maybe 15, 20 minutes. That was going to be it. Everything was going well until Morrison said he wasn't going on until he got an apology, a personal apology, from the mayor of New Haven as well as the police chief, and he wanted them to come to the arena into his dressing room and make the apology. Well, obviously that wasn't about to happen. So the people that were running the show were frantic because Morrison wouldn't go on the stage. So now Loxley did their, I don't know, 15 minutes, and the guy comes running up to me as we're going up the stairs. The only way you could get up to that stage was by, you know, like the old fire escapes, that really heavy metal, and it was a dead drop. There was no other way to get down. You had to, you know, go down the thing, which came into play when they threw him down the stairs. So he said to me, he says, "Tommy, you got to do more time." I said, "We're only supposed to do like 15 minutes. It's a Doors show. They want to see the Doors. They don't want to see me." And he said, "You got to stretch. He won't go on stage. You got to stretch." So we're doing the thing. Now, we had 3 girls at the time, three backups. We had a 10-piece band on stage, and we were doing, and we had a new record out. So we did our record, and then we did, you know, some dance stuff. Anyway, to make a long story short, every time I grabbed the mic to say, "Well, thank you very much," he'd do this from the side wing, stretch it, stretch it. Well, if I stretched it anymore, we would have had taffy, because I'm telling you, we were there way too long. We wound up on stage over 45 minutes and still no Morrison. So finally, I turned around and said to the drummer, I said, go to the break song, man, we're done. And we went down and I explained, I said, "What do you want me to do? They're getting ready to throw bricks and bottles here." I mean, you know, they wanted Morrison. So he finally got on stage, but when he got on stage, it was 11:45. Now, the owner of the arena was famous for not overpaying people that worked for him. And so consequently, he wanted everything done by 12 o'clock, because that's when all the union people, and they were all union people, the police, the fire watch, the ticket takers, everybody was union. They all went on double time, which wasn't a good thing for the owner of the venue. So to make a long story short, he turned on the lights. Now Morrison had just gotten on stage and had done a tune or two, and he went into a vamp. Now basically a vamp just means, you know, it's just a continuous beat so you can talk over it. And he started to vamp about being back in the back room, and he didn't know what happened. He was just with a little girl, asking her name, running his game. And then all of a sudden this police officer came up, and this police officer, he was fat, this police, now I'm talking as Morrison did it. He said he was a little short, fat guy, and he had scuffed brown shoes. And well, you don't really insult the New Haven Police Department when you're in front of a lot of people, because they all started to gather around the stage. And then he proceeded to do a few Michael Jackson tucks, and then he used that word that we're not supposed to use in polite public. He said F several times. Now this was a very mixed audience. There were a lot of moms and dads there with their kids, and they decided to get a little upset, and you started hearing boos. Well, what he did, which wasn't in the movie, wasn't in the book, but he did it, I was standing there watching him do it. He took a microphone base, or a stand, and just threw it out into the audience. He missed a kid's head by this much. Now, you guys know, how heavy the bases are. They're 10, 15 pounds, some of them, especially when they have equipment on top. So now the mother got mad, and she stood up and started to boo, and a lot of people started to boo. And so now the police now there was cops, had to be 40 cops surrounding the stage. Gentleman Jim Kelly, as we used to call him, Lieutenant Kelly, he walked up with 2 other police officers, and the lights, Morrison, meanwhile, was, "Turn on the freaking lights," and the lights would come on. He'd say, "Turn off the lights, the show's over," and that went back and forth for like 5 minutes, until finally Morrison just was out of control, and they arrested him. First time in the history of entertainment that a professional performer got arrested on stage in the middle of a performance. It never happened, and never happened since. So he made history just by doing that. But what they did was the keyboard player took a swing at the cop. So now all the other cops start rushing the stage. Now there's pandemonium. So they take a couple of the guys, and remember I told you the only way off that stage was straight down into a cement floor unless you turned around and climbed slowly down the ladder. He didn't. They just threw him off. So he went down 15 feet. Another guy went off 15 feet. And now there's just all hysteria breaking out in the back. We were worried about our amps. We're starting to throw ourselves over the amps. We didn't want them damaged. You know,
Sure,
whatever.
yeah.
I mean, come on. We had a gig the next week. So make a long story short, they started to arrest people because a lot of the press was there. A lot of the press from New York and California press because, I mean, he was an up-and-coming star. So the press did what the press usually does and got in the way of the police, and the police started arresting them. So all of a sudden, everybody's getting arrested, everybody's confused, nobody knows what's going on, and they start to clear everybody away. So after the police cars got through and took off wherever they were going, back to the station, I'm assuming, the cop, the officer that I had called in from the hall to clear the bathroom, he walked into me. He says, "Tommy," he said, "you called me into your dressing room. You're the complainant." I'm a 22-year-old kid. What do I care? Yeah, I'll be a complainant. What do you want me to do? He said, "I just want you to sign this piece of paper." So, signed the piece of paper. We waited for everything to calm down. We loaded the equipment in the car and off to the next gig.
At some point down the road, at what point did you realize that this had turned into a piece of folklore history, that this was a big deal?
It never dawned on me. It never dawned on me. Like I said, we've worked with so many acts. We did shows at the Oakdale, the Bushnell, before the arena because the Coliseum wasn't even built then. And because we had horns and because we had some records out and whatnot, we always got tapped on to open up the show. So, well, I was just used to performers. I mean, I was one. For 25 years, I did that. And I was used to attitudes, and I was used to vanity, and, you know, and everybody gets a little bit narcissistic when they have a bass around their neck or whatever. You know, gee, this feels good. How many of you girls like it? You know, and so we're used to it. No, I just never dawned on me until the press got involved. And then once the press got involved, they said, "Oh, this is going to make some papers." Well, it made a lot of papers, and they did it nationwide.
And made a movie. I mean, how many times have you told this story over the years?
You know what? Where I work, Randall Beach, who works for the New Haven Register, he had a guy who claimed I was never there. My band was never there, that two of his bands were there, which, I mean, come on. And so Beach wanted to find the girl. That was the original thing. He wanted to find the girl because nobody knew who she was. So he said, "If anybody knows what really happened backstage, could you get in touch with me?" So I said, "Sure, why not?" So I emailed him and said, "I was back there, you know, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Well, no, you weren't there. The other guy." I said, "No, I was there. I have pictures on stage," and blah, blah, blah. Make a long story short, we went back and forth texting. And he said, "Well, you know, we just don't quite have the grip on it I want." I said, "Well, Cheetah Magazine was there." I said, and they wrote a very uncomplimentary few lines about us. I think what they said was 3 girls fresh from the beauty parlor saying "unheard" into dead mics, while the rest of the band was trying to figure out what was going on. So, you know, so I was a little upset about that, to say the least. But the magazine, I said it was in the magazine. He said, "Can you get me a copy?" I said, this is 2005 now. I said, "That happened back in '67. I said, it's a magazine. What do I know where a magazine is?" He said, "Could you try?" So I said, "Yeah, I can try," because remember, I saved everything from the whole time I entertained. So I had my 10-year-old daughter and I said to her, "Honey, Daddy needs to find a magazine. It's probably down the cellar. Could you help me look?" And it took us 4 hours. But then I ran up like I just discovered lemonade and texted him right away. I said, "I've got the article." And I said, I'm going to send it over to you, which I did. I faxed it over, and then he sent me back. He said, this is all we need. Thank you very much. Case is closed. And you were the guy that was on stage.
Yeah. But surely, you know, in your years after that of touring as a musician,
Yeah.
you know, after a gig, having a couple of beers with some other band, I mean, it's got to come up eventually. It's
Oh, it
a big
came up,
part of
yeah.
the legend, right?
Well, it came up a lot. The last tour I did was we went with Bill Haley's Comets.
Wow.
We went from Virginia. We did a 29-city tour in 13 states. We went from Virginia down through the Carolinas, all the way through to the Deep South, and then went down one side of Florida and up the other.
Sure.
And obviously, I mean, there's nothing more dangerous than about 13 or 14 musicians with roadies on the road. And because they have no scruples and have no sense. I know I was one. And it was just a situation. So of course it came up, you know. But I never advanced it because I didn't think it was that big a deal. Like I say, I was a 22-year-old kid. What do I know about police necessities, like complaints?
Yeah.
And yeah, it always comes up in conversation, but more often than not, it's false information. You know, because I was talking to a guy, I'm on Facebook, and you know, a lot of the Facebook guys back and forth, and one of them said, well, you know, I'm the one that got him busted. And I said, no, you're not. He said, well, yeah, I am. I said, okay, what's your ID number? Because I'm taking you off my Facebook. But that happened all the time, you know. And to this day, I still get phone calls at my job. You were there. What really happened? You know? And I've told the story at parties, at events, at hopefully soon it's going to be book signing events. Right. And the story is the story. It's the same every time. So I'm tired of it. You know, it's like putting on an old tie. I need to buy a new tie.
But you're still writing a book.
I'm writing a
What
book.
made you want to do that, though?
Well, because so many things happened. We covered, I think, 39 or 40 states on tour. We were just a tour band. That's what we were doing. But some real funny things happened. And instead of just putting a bunch of pictures in a book, everything I could remember about it, I wrote down. So there was a story with every picture. I mean, we were basically, when we first went out, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, and we had 3 16-year-old girls on the road with us. We had to bring a chaperone, and their parents were not happy. We worked for the mob in Boston. I mean, come on. And I write all about it in the book. You know, how it was with the, you know, you had to speak Bostonese. You know, H-E means here. Come over here. You know. And you want some potato salad fetty? Come on. That's not the way to talk to girls, Joe. You know. And all the funny things I could remember, because I say in the book, you know, which is almost done, I said, you know, if you're wearing a guitar or a bass and you're on stage, trust me, somebody's going to take you home. And they did, over and over and over, they did. But it's funny because a lot of the guys that I had a lot of guys over the years, but 2 or 3 of them became big people. John Paiva, who now lives in Germany, was my guitar player for a few years. He left me to become the musical director for The Happenings, see you in September. And then he left them to become a Four Seasons. Because when Frankie Valli's original group broke up, if you've seen the movie or the play, and everybody was left except him. So he was a very smart guy. He said, why do I want to split the money 5 ways anymore? I'm going to hire 4 musicians who can sing, and it's Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And John was one of them. I had a trumpet player that left me to go with Roomful of Blues. Okay. He worked with them 25 years after he left me, and he just passed away last year. I had another drummer back when I was first starting that became the drummer for Danny Davis's Nashville Brass. And I've had quite a few people like that have gone on to, you know, bigger things, and it's all in the book. And, you know, hopefully, not just musicians, but I think every other page, you got to giggle or laugh. But it's stuff that actually happened. I lived it. And that's what makes it even funnier. That you say, no, that couldn't have happened. But the whole book is clean. You can buy it for the kids. It's all right. I mean, I make insinuations, but I don't actually come out with words that you don't want to hear at a party.
And keeping it clean, since you brought that up, that's a little extra irony is that the guy who kind of narked on Jim Morrison in the bathroom became associated with law enforcement, and you now work for the Narcotics Enforcement Officers Association.
Yeah, but let's be clear. I'm not a police officer.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not a police officer. They actually hired me to be a media consultant back 27 years ago, and when I retired in '85, and everybody hates me for it. Everybody being musicians said, "How can you do that, man?" You know, I said, "Because the thrill was gone. I worked with 160 stars. I've done everything I want to do. I'm getting married in like 2 or 3 weeks. It's time to go home." So I said to the guys that were with me, I said, "Guys, I'm retiring. The group is now yours." So they said, "Can we keep the name?" I said, "Absolutely." And they have to this day. They're still in New Haven. So now the band has actually been around 51 years. Mm-hmm. And, you know, which is cool, I guess. But
they got a different Tommy now? What? It's still Tommy and the
No,
Rivieras?
yeah, it's still Tommy and the Rivieras, and they're still gigging.
Yeah.
They kept the name out of respect to me, which, you know, I appreciate.
Okay.
But there's one of the guys that work for the Animals that's with them, and another one that was with one of the other British groups. But it was just a situation where I had enough, because I was on the road for almost 25 years. Yeah. I came home for holidays, and that was it. We were constantly playing on the road. But as a result of that, we played with everybody. And the actual shows, you know, the stage shows, were great because they all became my friends. So I had this huge conglomeration of friends, but I wanted to do something else. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and when I got back, I kind of missed the spotlight. So I bought a pro wrestling company, and I did that for 10 years, and I was a ring announcer, something that kept myself in the spotlight.
Okay.
Hey, you can't outshine me. And so I did that for 10 years, and while I was working for the NEOA. And what I was doing was their community affairs. We were setting up, we would go to, people probably remember it, because at this stage of the game, it's not done anymore, but when Polaroid had the Instamatic camera, what we would do is we would go down to like all the Westfield malls, and we would set up a huge police presence. I'd have 30, 40 cops there, and we would have a whole display of drug display, and we would get the kids up, and it would all be free. We'd take their picture, put it in a book. We'd make them take a pledge. I promised to eat all my candy at Halloween. I promised to open up all my Christmas presents. Okay, you're an honorary NEOA member, and give them a little thing. And it was kind of a cool deal. And we were drawing thousands of people. We did all the fairs in Connecticut. We did most of the venues. And as the world turns, you know, Polaroid ditched the pictures, the Instamatic pictures, which kind of took the strength out of what we were doing. So we just moved on, and we kept doing what we're doing. And now I'm in my 27th year. And it's cool because I can still do what I used to do, but just in a different way.